Hello, Nick. Thank you for joining me. Can you introduce yourself to the Informs membership?
Sure, yeah. So I'm an operations research data scientist working at Facebook.
Okay. And how long have you been an Informs member?
I went to my first annual meeting in 2015, so
Okay.
I've been a member since then. So on my 7th year.
Great. Was that the Philadelphia meeting?
It was, yes, it was the Philadelphia meeting.
I was there.
Were you there? Yeah, very fond memories.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this field.
Yeah, so it wasn't a particularly linear path that I followed. I always knew I wanted to do something quantitative. I had a great high school physics teacher, and so sort of pursued that as my undergrad.
Okay.
And then when I was looking for grad school, which I thought I was going to end up in a physics grad program, I found at the University of Washington a program called Quantitative Ecology and Resource Management, which basically collects people from lots of different quantitative backgrounds and sets them out to work on problems in ecology and resource management. And one of the required classes was about linear optimization and its applications. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is the application of quantitative methods to the real world that I've kind of been looking for the whole time. And sort of the rest is history. So yeah, so I did some natural resource management optimization as a master's student, and then I switched over to the transportation community for my PhD, and yeah, the rest is history.
Great. How did you decide to go into industry versus academia after you finished your doctorate?
Yeah, so I know that this is a question that lots of students may be struggling with. For me, I always leaned industry. I'm not exactly sure why. I kind of wonder if it has to do with having a short attention span. I mean, I just like being in an environment where things change quickly. There's lots of tight deadlines. I just feel like I work better in those conditions.
Yeah.
And I know that they don't always offer like the same degree of, you can't explore a problem quite as much in those conditions as you can in say in academia. But obviously it has like its own flavor of creativity. You're forced to make compromises and figure out what's really important and what are the constraints that actually are hard, and how do we capture this and spit out a product quickly. And I also like that it forces you to learn new skills, perhaps more often than you would have otherwise. So
it was never a question for you? You always
really
your head in there?
I mean, I've always leaned that way. I did wonder, towards the end, should I be applying for more academic jobs? But I mean, I graduated the first May in which COVID was going on. And so, it made what is already a very competitive academic job market, even more so.
Right.
And so that also sort of pushed me farther in that direction.
Yeah, because like you said, I know a lot of the student members that I've spoken to, they struggle with, what to do after graduation.
Yeah.
So do you have advice for those students that are preparing to graduate and which to choose and how?
Yeah. So I know that there's a lot of pressure on the decision, and you do, it is a pretty important decision. But I would say that the worst case scenario is that you're going to end up with a job you still like. I think that if you know that you're sort of in this operations research management science community, like you have this training, and you're just looking for something that is like a good fit for your skills, and you get to help solve problems. I think regardless of whether you go academia or industry, you're going to have a job that you like. That said, so I do feel like the vast majority of my peers when I was a student were leaning academia. So I feel like I have to fight harder for industry in this answer here.
Right.
So academia certainly does offer some things that industry doesn't, right? So just the time to like really dive into a project, and sort of the flexibility to explore more or less what you want. I mean, obviously there's constraints there around grants and funding and all these things, but obviously more freedom. So if you feel like you absolutely can't sacrifice those things, then I think academia is sort of the way forward. But industry, again, it forces you to learn perhaps more skills in a shorter amount of time than you would have otherwise. It's sort of like a breadth first depth compromise.
Right.
And so I think if you like working in an environment that changes quickly, I would suggest industry.
Great. It's good to hear that. We're always looking for more practitioner members. So,
Yeah.
hopefully your answer will bring some more to your side. Not that you have to pick a side. You could do
Right, right,
both.
right,
You can switch.
right, right.
Um, so how do you define analytics? Informs has its own definition, but what's yours?
Sure. Yeah. So I feel like it's super broad, especially given like the three branches: predictive, descriptive, and prescriptive.
Mhm.
It covers a huge array of things. So in general, I think about it as the use of data to help make decisions. It's just sort of the if
Yeah,
somebody were to make me spit out a definition, that's what it
yeah,
would be.
it's a good one. Simple. So tell us what it's like to work at Facebook.
Yeah. So I have been remote the entire time. So
Okay.
I can't comment on the offices, but I do hear that they're spectacular.
Mm.
The kitchens, the workspaces, employee shuttles that have monitors in them with HDMI hookups, so you can be like super productive while you're on your way to work.
Yeah. Huh.
Fancy coffee bars, all those kinds of things. So
So you obviously mentioned that you started this job during the pandemic and you haven't been to the office, and now your work is also COVID-19 related. But
right, right.
is there anything else COVID has affected your last year professionally or otherwise that you're willing to share?
Yeah. So the first big impact that COVID had was making my defense remote.
Oh,
So that was a bummer.
yeah.
Still really looking forward to a celebration with my advisors and my committee members at some point in the future in person.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, so that was disappointing. But since then, yes, since working at Facebook again, I've been remote the whole time, and a lot of it's basically shifted what our team is working on. So previously we had priorities to help make these employee shuttles more efficient
Hmm.
and to help reduce the amount of food waste in some of the company cafeterias. But nobody's coming into the office right now. None of these
Yeah.
kitchens are open. None of the shuttles are running, right? So these problems have just sort of dropped off of
Right.
the queue. And
Hmm.
so in their place, new projects come up about how do we bring people back into the offices safely. And then it's just kind of shifted what else people are caring about right now. So some projects that had been longer term, now that some of the more pressing issues have been cleared away, have risen to the
Hmm.
top.
Good. I noticed you did some work on Atari-fying vehicle routing problems. Can you describe this?
Yeah, so I really love this project, and it's one I'm really glad you asked about it because I'm super excited about it. So basically, what we're doing was we're trying to take these vehicle routing problems, which basically, how do we send a vehicle around to visit some set of customers in the minimum amount of time possible, or to maximize some other thing, or minimize some other thing.
Mhm.
So basically, we're trying to turn these problems into a video game,
Mhm.
right? And the reason we're doing this is because this Google research team, DeepMind, has created this basically a neural network, this special machine learning algorithm that can basically just randomly play Atari games and eventually learn to play them very well, exceeding human performance in these games.
Right.
And so the thought was basically this framework already exists. If we can just convert our research problems from sort of your classical research problem into a playable video game, then maybe we can just tap into these methods to help solve our research problems, to help play this game and learn how to play it very well.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons I'm very excited is because these are problems where vehicle routing problems where things are constantly changing. Customers are popping up, or there's new constraints showing up while you're trying to solve them. These are problems that are often very difficult to solve. And so if you can just push that into a video game, and you have something that is just this little robot that's very good at playing video games, then your problem is effectively solved. We sort of hack
Right.
this.
Yeah. Do you think that could be used as a classroom tool to teach about vehicle routing problems, or is it more of just a solution spitter outer?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, what our primary focus was the solution spitter router,
Yeah.
but yeah, I absolutely think it'd be a great classroom tool, right? I mean, to expose younger audiences to
Mhm.
vehicle routing problems. Okay, you could have them compete against the solution spitter router. If we have some little robot that's trained to do these things very well, the kids
Right.
can compete against these things. I love the idea, and I absolutely think it could. and I was thinking about this, and Pac-Man is almost sort of a vehicle routing problem with some very odd constraints. And so, yeah, I mean, so it's just sort of proof in point that, yeah, I think this could definitely be a good tool to help expose a wider audience to vehicle routing problems.
Yeah, because sometimes I try to ask, how we can promote analytics careers to high school students, who don't know that this field exists. So
Yeah.
when I saw that's kind of what went through my mind, was that this would be something, even though high school students don't know what Atari is, but
Yeah.
they will learn. They probably know Pac-Man.
It
That's
probably.
making a comeback. But
Yeah.
So that was my
Yeah,
first.
no, I do love the idea, and we're hoping to get basically an online playable version of our vehicle routing problem deployed at some point. So,
Cool.
yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, let us know. Was that research published anywhere, or was that just part of?
It's actually still sort of ongoing right now.
Is it-
It's on Archive. There's a preprint available on Archive, but obviously we do hope to publish it in a peer-reviewed journal eventually.
Yeah. Are you considering an informs journal?
Of course.
We have transportation science.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a big fan of transportation science. Yeah. I think this would also be a good fit for the Informs Journal on Computing.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, those are outlets we're considering. Yes.
Yeah. Which Informs Journal do you read most?
Transportation science, just given my background. And it's also research that I generally find very interesting. It's something about moving things or people around in the real world. I like, I just like transportation. So I find the research interesting, and the quality of research is really high. It's a really impressive community that very happy to be part of.
Good. Glad you enjoy it.
Yeah.
How about something you learned in the last month, either professionally or otherwise?
Yeah, so not professionally, but I did learn how to make pastéis de nata, which is a Portuguese custard tart.
Oh.
Yeah, so I don't know if you're familiar with the Great British Bake Off, but there's online baking classes where you can take classes with some of the former contestants.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so we learned how to make these custard tarts with Dan Beasley Harding from a few seasons ago.
Fun.
Yeah.
Was it difficult?
It wasn't.
Are you a baker?
I often join my wife in the kitchen to bake, so I pick up a lot of skills secondhand, and some familiarity with some of the background concepts there. So this definitely wasn't like super straightforward. Like you had to make a laminated pastry, so you make a dough, you spread it out, and you're slathering it with butter and folding it over and
all the fold,
repeat, right?
Yep.
So. There's some intermediate level techniques required, but it was definitely approachable. I think anybody could do it.
Do you need a proofing drawer for that one?
We didn't know. It proofed at room temp.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. We didn't quite have all of the supplies available to the contestants on the show.
Yeah, like in the tent.
Right, like in the tent. Yes.
Right, the infamous tent.
Yes.
So tell us something else that not many people know about you. You're a secret baker. What else?
Secret baker, yeah. So as a kid, I really wanted to be an astronaut. And so I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately, at least in terms of like being like a NASA astronaut. But I'm super excited about the private space industry. And I'm sort of squirreling away money to potentially retire to Mars. I mean, not really. There's a lot of people I have to convince that this is a good idea first. But
right.
I have dreams that, my 401k I'll cash out and buy a ticket to Mars.
So that sort of segues into my next question. If you could safely travel anywhere right now, where would you go? I guess if the answer might be Mars, but.
I guess so you did specify safely travel anywhere. So
that's true. Touche.
So if that was true start to finish, then maybe Mars. But no, family's in Missouri and haven't seen them in a long time. So I think I'd really like to see them. So they're top of my list.
Yeah.
But after that, I would, in between them and Mars, I would like to go to Seville. Had a conference there a few years ago and just really love the city and would love to go back as sort of the post-COVID, travel birth. Yeah.
Right. Hopefully we'll get there soon.
Yeah.
Is there anything from 2020 that is positive that you hope to remain in the future?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I spent some time thinking about this, and I mean, there's all of the sort of the boring, obvious answers like the ability to work remotely
Mm,
and
it's a good one though.
to go options at restaurants and breweries and these kinds of things. But here in Seattle, one of the things I really like is that they've closed some of the streets. So with lots of indoor things, not available right now, they've shut down some streets to through traffic and basically made them like walk, bike,
Hmm,
play friendly streets.
cool.
Yeah, and so I feel like people have really been taking advantage of those. There's been a lot more people taking active transportation on bikes and by foot, and there's been a lot,
Hmm.
more use of the parks.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see, you walk by a park and it's just packed. There's like, I mean, not packed to an unsafe degree, but
Right. Everyone still
people,
has masks on.
appropriate. Yes, yeah, sitting out on blankets and things and
Yeah.
hanging out with their family. Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
And then another thing I really like is I mean, I work elbow to elbow with my wife usually, and I know way
Hmm.
more about her work and her coworkers than I ever knew before.
Yeah.
And I
That's
think it's sort of,
nice.
yeah, it sort of make you appreciate, what the other people in your household are doing on a day to
Right.
day. Then I like that.
Yeah. Good. Good answers. My final question is the hardest hitting question I have for you. And since you are in Seattle, correct?
Yep, yep, yep.
Starbucks or Dunkin'?
Yeah. So so point to Dunkin' for donuts, just because who doesn't love donuts?
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
especially a big fan of Munchkins. Um, but if I'm going for coffee between the two, I'm going to pick Starbucks. There's
Yeah.
a reserve roastery here where they have lots of like interesting beans and preparation methods, and
Cool.
it's a fun place to go. But
Yeah.
actually, here in Seattle, I tend to drink coffee from a small local roaster who tries to specifically do things, source beans from farms that are emphasizing sustainability and often are woman run.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you today, Nick. I appreciate your time.
It's been great chatting with you too, Kara. Thank you.